Story 1. I work on major construction projects, and the powers that be are always looking to optimize costs. Pay less for the same stuff, and they rarely pay attention to the old adage of, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Recently, we had a large number of pipes that needed to be moved out to the site. The normal way to do this is to collect the pipe from the supplier, move it to a laydown storage yard, and then bundle it up into smaller loads that can be sent out to the construction site. You will see why this is in a few moments. In this instance, though, Dave the inexperienced engineer had other plans. In Dave's infinite wisdom, the pipe would be moved directly from the supplier to the right-of-way ROW, and this would thus save time, minimize damage, no double handling, and all of the extra transport costs. I strongly objected because Dave's plan was about as sensible as installing a screen door on a submarine to keep the fish out. Needless to say, Dave's plan was accepted with enthusiastic acclaim, and Dave received many pats on the back for his thriftiness and cost-saving vision. I just sighed. Now, in the rural parts of the state where we are running pipelines, the ROW is often a dirt track in between fenced-off paddocks where livestock graze or crops are grown. There is quite limited room to place the pipes on the ground, and even less room to maneuver once you add in the vacuum lifter truck required to unload the transport truck. Dave, of course, didn't consider anything I said on this to be pertinent to the matter at hand. So I sent out a final, "Are you sure?" email to all and sundry. Yes, we are sure. Just get it done. Okay then. There are about 30 truckloads of pipe to unload. This cannot all be done in a single day, and so I organized for the first 4 truckloads to be sent out on day 1 along with the vacuum lifter. The truck arrives at the row, and the vacuum lifter starts unloading the pipe and laying it down beside the trench where the pipe would be buried. The pipe is 21 m69 long, or about the same length as the truck. The unloading operations, therefore, take much longer compared to unloading the pipe into a laydown yard. No big deal, the driver doesn't care because he gets paid, but the other 3 trucks scheduled for unloading can't get in because there's not enough room in the ROW for them to get past each other, and there's only 1 vacuum lifter because the site crew typically don't try to unload 160 lengths of pipe in a day. It's getting dark soon, and drivers 2, 3, and 4 are in the same predicament. Our site crew have spare space at their camp and pick up each of the drivers who each leave their trucks where they are parked and go off to sleep. Over the next few days, we managed to get the remaining loads unloaded, but the delay has held up the ROW operations for 3 days. Contractually, trucks have a certain demurrage period, and in this case, the hourly rate was $130. The total cost for Dave's plan was a whopping $111,520, and he was moved to a less demanding role in line with his experience and skill set. He is no longer in charge of anything and is back performing the sort of boring work normally assigned to a graduate engineer. Story 2. I used to work at a before and after care place as a site coordinator. Basically, I was in charge unless my boss was there. We had so many entitled parents who never thought their precious little angels ever did anything wrong. Let me preface this by saying I absolutely love working with kids. They are the best part of my job, but the worst part of my job is usually the parents, though there are some pretty amazing parents. Now, I worked there for about 2 years. There was this one kid who was in 1st grade the first year I was there and was super sweet, never got in trouble, always doing what we asked, etc. Well, the following year, he became friends with some of the older boys and started acting up a lot more. Basically, every single day, he would get in trouble and lose some time from his free time. Because there were usually so many of us working, about 5 every afternoon shift, a different teacher would catch him, take time away, and then tell his mom when she came to pick him up that he was rough housing. This happened every day for the first 2 weeks of school. We were well within our rights to write the kid up, 3 write-ups, and you could be removed from the program, but because we knew how he was from last year, and because it was usually a different teacher disciplining him, it never got to the point that any of us felt he needed to be written up. Until Mom complained. She set up a meeting with our director, my boss, and basically said, "Those teachers are bullying my 8-year-old son, and unless he is written up, I don't want to hear another thing about it." When my boss called me and told me, I was furious. First off, we had about 50 kids every afternoon. Why would 5 grown adults want to bully your 8-year-old when we have 49 other kids to worry about? Second, why are you blaming us for what your son is doing? Obviously, the behavior isn't changing. Cue malicious compliance. So, I got my coworkers together, and they were furious at first. But then I said, with a huge smile, so I don't want any of you bothering Mom unless he gets written up. All of my coworkers smiled, knowing exactly what I wanted them to do. It took maybe 10 minutes for us to catch the kid roughhousing again. Immediately, we took a bit from his free time, sat him down, and did the write-up. The kid has to be there so that we can ask why they did it, explain why they're getting written up, and so on, and the kid just starts crying. Now, I hate seeing kids cry, but at this point, he had been being a little jerk, so he kind of deserved it. I signed off on the write-up, along with my coworker, and my coworker went right up to Mom with it when she got there. Her face turned beet red as she glared at her son before signing it without another word and stormed out, him following along sheepishly. We laughed about it later and didn't have another issue with the boy. He went right back to being an actual angel. Story 3. For privacy reasons, I'm being vague. This didn't happen to me, but I did witness it. For the last 5 years, I have worked in a rural office of a large organization in outback Australia. I work 4 hours away from the main building. The organization receives various amounts of government funding for lots of community programs. As such, the organization has a main building, several hubs in the same town, and a few hub offices in different towns. Like my office, not part of this story. The organization has a volume of maintenance and security concerns which they contract out to Security and Maintenance Company, which I will refer to as the Security Company. The contract between the security company and the organization is very clear regarding expectations of both companies, costs outlined, and burden of costs relating to oversights, important for later. The contract is renegotiated every 3 years and is profitable for the security company if all goes well. The security company was in charge of maintenance and security for the main office and all offices within 20 kilometers of the main office. I have a few friends across the organization, and we meet up for drinks when I'm required to work in the main office, which is about 2-3 times a year. During my first visit to the main office in 2018, as usual, I met with a few friends, including John, who manages a hub that is required to be staffed 24/7 with 8 workers per shift, 3 shifts a day. The hub is located in a problematic part of town known for violence, drugs, and theft. As such, workers require security presence during shift change to ensure their safety, as workers have been assaulted in the past. It's company policy, as worker safety is a concern. Over a few drinks, John told us that the security company appointed a new manager, Mr. Jerk, who oversees security for the hubs. Mr. Jerk was hired after his predecessor retired. Management in security companies receive a bonus each year if their department runs at a profit. Before Mr. Jerk, security ran smoothly and turned a small bonus for the manager. But Mr. Jerk, wanting a bigger bonus, decided to reduce his department's costs by hiring fewer guards. This affected John's staff, as security guards were not always present during shift change. John spoke to Mr. Jerk, who promptly responded with, "If your workers have to wait, then so be it. We will get there when we get there. Do I tell you how to manage your staff? No? Then bugger off and let me run mine." Kevin, who works in the contract department, broke out the biggest smile and said if you play your cards right, you can really mess with Mr. Jerk over. Kevin explained how the security company is expected to reimburse the organization for any costs resulting from negligence or oversight on the security company's behalf, something Mr. Jerk is probably not aware of. At this point, Aaron, who works in the accounts department, started laughing and said if employees can't leave because it's too unsafe, then they are entitled to get paid until they can leave, including overtime. This overtime would be considered a reimbursement cost according to the contract. You could see the light bulb go off in John's head as an evil smile crept on his face, and he said, "We will wait for security like Mr. Jerk said." The next part John told me via phone calls over the coming months. John sent Mr. Jerk an email informing him that the lack of security is causing a financial concern for John's department as workers get overtime until security guards arrive. Mr. Jerk replied with, "I'll keep it in mind," confirming receipt of the email, and for the next month, John emailed Mr. Jerk daily with shift change times and told his employees to log when security arrived, as that's when they clock off. Security would always arrive 3 hours late, and one night, they didn't show up at all. This caused a massive amount of overtime for workers, and due to industrial relations laws, casual workers had to be brought in to cover shifts that assigned workers were no longer allowed to work. Minimum 16-hour break between shifts in this field. All in all, payroll in John's department was up by $50,000 in 1 month. John was called into the CEO's office for this budget blowout, along with Aaron. In the end, the security company repaid the $50,000, Mr. Jerk lost his bonus, and more security guards were hired. Story 4. Some years ago, I moved into London from a non-English speaking country. On my first year, I worked at the cinema of a huge shopping center, probably the worst job I've ever had. Low pay, bad conditions, long and late hours, physically demanding, and terrible customers in general. But my colleagues were great, and being new to the country, it's not that there was a wide variety of jobs for me to choose from, so I stayed there for a while. One day, I was working at the tills when I got to assist this difficult lady. I'll call her Karen. She definitely matched the profile, including the haircut. In the foyer area of the cinema, there were trailers and loud music playing constantly in the background to the point that during peak hours, we often had to lean over the tills to hear our customers properly over all the noise. This day, our Karen arrived at the till talking on the phone and started ordering without even looking at me or hanging up. I tried to follow her the best I could, but she kept ignoring my questions and looking around while talking on the phone, so I could barely hear her. Plus, I kept interrupting her conversation with all the necessary questions. You know, if you want a combo, you need to tell me the size, choice of drinks and snack, extras, and so on. Otherwise, I will have to ask you one by one. The lady seemed annoyed by me trying to do my job. Maybe she wanted me to guess her choice of popcorn. God knows, the thing is that after my second or third question, and still being on the phone, she starts shouting at me. They put immigrants like you on the tills. What do they expect to happen? I want to speak to someone who speaks English. Bring me the manager. Now, I'm not going to say that my English is flawless, and I definitely have a foreign accent, but having spent most of my life studying English, I have had an advanced and fluent level for years, and I definitely never had any problem with any customer before that day. Anyway, judging by the looks of the rest of the customers, I understood that Karen's behavior was speaking for itself, and I let her have the rant instead of answering her. I gave her a big smile and said, "Karen, I speak English perfectly, but I'll bring you the manager anyway. I'll be back in a moment." I left the till as it was. She didn't let me finish asking her about her order, so the till was including some expensive extras in the combo by default, and I left her waiting. I ignored the fact that the closest manager was around the corner and took a long walk to the office. I have to mention here that she was late for her movie from the beginning, because some people know that there are around 20-30 minutes of ads before the movie begins, and they arrive at the venue right on time, not considering the fact that at peak hours, there are always queues. So I took my time. I walked to the office, had a little break from the noisy foyer, said hi to a couple of colleagues on my way, and finally found my manager, who happens to be from the same country as I am. By the time we were back, Karen was fuming, already around 5-10 minutes late to the movie. My manager served her politely, and while she was still paying, he started talking to me in our language, something he had never done in front of any customer before or after Karen. She ended up being served by 2 immigrants, spending around £40 on some overpriced combo, and arriving 15 minutes late to her movie,